Day 74 of the war and the standoff between the United States and Iran continues. Of course, the politics behind that goes backwards and forwards, but from a military perspective, it's relatively simple. When a country goes to war, really goes to war with another country, it tries to attack the political center of gravity of the enemy, either to destroy that political center of gravity or to bend it to its will or to force it to do something which it wouldn't otherwise have done. And when this war started, Israel and the United States began a bombing campaign, and they conducted apparently 21,000 attacks across Iran up to the 7th of April. But it clearly didn't work. They tried to decapitate the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, but they didn't. They tried to destroy the center of decision making in Iran so there'd be no alternative to the Iranians but to surrender, but that didn't happen either. So attacking the political center of gravity was a failure by the 7th of April. So if you can't attack the political center of gravity, the next thing to do is to go for the military center of gravity. And what the Americans have achieved is that they were able to take out the whole of the Iranian Air Force, but Iran can still operate in the air with ballistic missiles and drones. The Americans took out the whole of the Iranian Navy, but still the Iranians are able to operate in the Strait of Hormuz with small craft and drones and robotic ships. They're still able to be a sea power of sorts. And the Americans gravely damaged the IRGC and the Iranian ground forces. But if the Americans were to land on any of the islands in the Gulf, or still less, any part of Iran itself, it's a pretty fair bet that they'd end up fighting pretty quickly. So the Americans have got plenty of facilities in the area. They've got air bases in Qatar, they've got air bases in Saudi Arabia, air bases in the UAE, all of which could be used. They've got other air bases too. They're not short of air power, nor are they short of naval power. There are no fewer than 2 carrier strike groups in the area and 2 Marine Expeditionary Units, plus a brigade of the 82nd Airborne, ready for all sorts of operations. They're not short of military power at all in the area. But that military power is essentially about 400 or 500 miles away from the Strait of Hormuz. And that's the Americans' problem. The real center of military gravity for the Iranians is the Strait of Hormuz. And although the Americans have got plenty of military hardware in the region, it's quite a long way away. So what they've tried to do with Operation Freedom, which only lasted for a day, remember, but is still on the stocks, President Trump has said maybe he'll go back to doing it. Operation Freedom was an attempt to use 6th generation warfare, not to move into the Strait of Hormuz, but to use drones and missiles and AI and intelligence in order to pressurize anything the Iranians did while all of the ships that are trapped in the Strait of Hormuz come out. And that's the Americans' main problem. 6th generation warfare. Maybe it'll work, maybe it wouldn't. It was only tried for a day. If the Americans were to go back to 5th generation warfare, what they would do is they'd move their big carrier strike groups towards the Gulf, into the Gulf of Oman, and they would take control, physically take control of the Strait of Hormuz. They'd fight a battle for the Strait of Hormuz. And if they fight that battle, they would win it. But if they win it, they would also almost undoubtedly take some losses. And that would be the main problem for President Trump. This is the USS Abraham Lincoln. Very hard to imagine the Iranians could ever sink that, but they might damage it. They might be able to do something. They might be able to kill or injure some of the personnel. And that, even a damaged Abraham Lincoln, even a damaged destroyer, would actually be a political tragedy for President Trump, which you find very difficult to live with in terms of American public opinion. And so here we are back at the standoff. The Iranians obviously calculate that they can live with the material damage of this war longer than he can live, President Trump can live, with the political damage that the war is doing. And the Iranians are saying now, they say, if the Americans attack us again, we've got all sorts of surprises up our sleeve, with all sorts of things that they won't expect that we can do. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't. But the fact that they're saying that is a very good example of the nature of the warfare we're into. We may be in a world of potentially 6th generation robotic warfare. But the politics of asymmetric warfare still apply, and they apply in this war in a very obvious way.